The gleaming knife trembled in Dion's calloused hands as he watched the white chef beside him receive another promotion, the third one this year. Meanwhile, Dion's paycheck remained half the size despite his ragu being the restaurant's most requested dish, whispered about in Seattle's foodie circles like a sacred recipe. The fluorescent lights of Meridian Gastropub cast harsh shadows across the stainless steel kitchen where Dion had spent the last 5 years perfecting his craft. Every morning at 5 a.m. he'd arrive before anyone else, prepping vegetables with the precision of a surgeon, his dark skin glistening with sweat from the industrial ovens. The other cooks, all white, all promoted above him, would stumble in hours later, nursing hangovers and attitude. "Another flawless service, Dion," muttered Jake, the newest hire who'd somehow become sous chef within 6 months. "Maybe one day you'll figure out how to actually cook." The snicker that followed felt like acid in Dion's stomach, but he kept his eyes down, focused on the simmering pot of his grandmother's ragu recipe, the one that had customers calling ahead to reserve portions. The lunch rush had ended, and Dion stepped into the alley behind the restaurant for his 15-minute break. The Seattle drizzle painted the brick walls in shades of gray despair. That's when he saw her, a small figure hunched over the dumpster, her thin arms reaching desperately into the garbage. She couldn't have been more than 12, her cornrows unraveling, her clothes too big and stained with the evidence of life on the streets. She was trying to extract a moldy dinner roll, her small fingers picking off the green spots with the careful concentration of someone who understood hunger intimately. The sight hit Dion like a physical blow. He remembered those days from his own childhood, the gnawing emptiness, the shame of desperation, the way hunger could make a person invisible to the world. "Hey," he called softly, not wanting to startle her. She froze, her dark eyes wide with the kind of fear that comes from too many encounters with adults who saw her as nothing more than a problem to be solved or ignored. She clutched the moldy bread to her chest like treasure. "Wait here," Dion said, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. "Just wait." He disappeared back into the kitchen, his heart hammering. The dinner service prep was in full swing, but he moved with purpose to his station. There, in the walk-in cooler, sat a container of his ragu, the batch he'd made for the staff meal that no one ever bothered to eat because they preferred ordering pizza. He ladled a generous portion over fresh pasta, added a warm dinner roll, and wrapped it carefully. The girl was still there when he returned, now sitting on a milk crate, eyeing him with cautious curiosity. "This is for you," he said, kneeling to her level and extending the warm container. "It's fresh. I made it this morning." Her eyes filled with tears as the aroma hit her. Rich tomatoes, herbs, the kind of love that could only be stirred into food by someone who understood both hunger and hope. She accepted it with shaking hands. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the city's hum. That's when the back door burst open with a bang that echoed off the alley walls. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Sarah Meridian stood in the doorway like an avenging angel of entitlement, her perfectly straightened blonde hair catching the gray light, her designer jeans a stark contrast to the girl's torn clothes. As the owner's daughter and general manager, Sarah ruled the restaurant with the kind of casual cruelty that comes from never having to question one's place in the world. "You cannot just give away our food," she continued, her voice rising to a shriek. "Do you have any idea what this costs us? What this looks like?" Dion stood slowly, placing himself between Sarah and the girl, who had shrunk back against the brick wall. "She was hungry," he said simply. "I don't care if she was starving." Sarah's face was flushed with rage. "This is stealing! This is... She struggled for words, her privileged worldview colliding with a reality she'd never had to face. "This makes us look bad. What if customers see this? What if they think we just hand out free food to people like..." She stopped herself, but the unfinished sentence hung in the air like poison. The girl had started eating, tears streaming down her face as she savored each bite. The sight seemed to enrage Sarah further. "Get away from here," she snapped at the child. "Go, before I call the police." But the girl didn't move. Instead, she looked up at Dion with something that might have been gratitude or recognition or promise. She pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket and pressed it into his hand before disappearing into the maze of Seattle's streets. Sarah was already pulling out her phone, snapping photos of the empty food container, the scene, Dion's face. "This is going straight to my father," she hissed, "and to HR, and probably to social media. Local restaurant chef steals food to feed vagrants." How do you think that's going to play? I used my own break meal, Dion said quietly. I don't care whose meal it was. You're representing this brand and this. She gestured wildly at the alley. This is not the image we want to project. You're done. Clear out your locker. The piece of paper in Dion's hand was small, the handwriting shaky but determined. When I become important, I will come back for you. It was signed with a single initial, A. Dion looked at Sarah, at her fury and disgust, at the way she couldn't even look in the direction the girl had gone. He thought about 5 years of doubled shifts and halved respect, of recipes stolen and credit given to others, of the daily small cruelties that carved away at a person's soul. I'm not the one who should be ashamed here, he said, his voice steady. The termination was swift and brutal. By the end of the day, Dion's reputation in Seattle's restaurant scene was poisoned. Sarah had made sure of that, spinning the story as theft and insubordination, painting herself as the reasonable manager dealing with an unstable employee. The other restaurants wouldn't touch him. For 2 years, Dion worked construction, his chef's knives gathering dust in his apartment. But he never stopped cooking. He started a small catering business from his kitchen, building a quiet reputation among the city's working-class communities. His ragu became legend again, but this time among people who understood its true value. The girl, he never learned her name, haunted his thoughts. He'd tried to find her, spending weekends walking through the areas where homeless youth congregated, but Seattle's streets had swallowed her completely. 8 years passed. Dion was prepping for a small catering job when his phone buzzed with a news alert. Seattle restaurant empire sold to mystery buyer. The photo showed the gleaming exterior of Meridian Gastropub, now sporting a sold sign. He almost deleted the notification, but something made him keep reading. The buyer, identified only as a tailor, plans to renovate the space into the flagship location for a new restaurant concept. Local real estate sources confirmed the purchase price exceeded $3 million. A tailor. The note, the shaky handwriting, the promise. Dion's hands shook as he Googled the name. The results took his breath away. Ariana Taylor, 28 years old. James Beard Award winner, host and winner of America's Next Great Chef, owner of 7 restaurants across 3 states, net worth estimated at $50 million. The photos showed a poised, beautiful black woman in chef's whites, her smile confident and warm. But it was the interview that made his heart stop. I grew up on the streets, she told Food and Wine magazine, homeless from age 11 to 15. But I never forgot the kindness of strangers. There was one chef in Seattle who gave me a meal when I needed it most. He taught me that food isn't just sustenance, it's dignity. It's love. When I opened my first restaurant, I knew I wanted to pay that forward. Every restaurant in her empire had a program. Free meals for the homeless, job training for at-risk youth, second chances for ex-felons. She'd built an empire on the foundation of that single act of kindness. The renovation of the old Meridian Gastropub took 6 months. Dion watched from across the street as workers gutted the interior, as new equipment arrived, as the sign went up, Dion's Kitchen, a place where everyone eats. The opening night was invitation only, covered by every food publication in the Pacific Northwest. Dion stood outside, holding the invitation that had arrived at his apartment with a simple note. It's time. The restaurant was transformed. Gone were the cold steel surfaces and harsh lighting. In their place, warm wood, soft illumination, walls covered with photos of smiling faces from every walk of life. The kitchen was open concept, allowing diners to see the chefs at work. And there, at the center of it all, was Ariana Taylor. She was taller now, confident in a way that spoke of battles fought and won. But when she saw Dion, her composure cracked. Tears filled her eyes, the same eyes that had looked up at him with such desperate gratitude all those years ago. You came, she whispered. You kept your promise, he replied. The crowd of food critics and investors watched in confusion as Ariana led Dion to the kitchen, to a station that had been prepared specifically for him. His knife roll sat on the counter, new premium steel that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Head chef, she announced to the room, partners in this venture. The man who taught me that cooking isn't about profit margins or Instagram followers. It's about feeding people, all people. The cameras flashed as she hugged him, but Dion barely noticed. He was looking at the menu board, at the featured dish listed at the top. Dion's famous ragu, made with love, served with dignity. Sarah Meridian was in the crowd that night, her face a mask of shock and rage. She'd recognized Dion immediately, and the realization of what was happening hit her like cold water. The homeless girl she'd screamed at, the vagrant she'd threatened to call police on, was now one of the most powerful people in the food industry. When Ariana took the microphone to address the crowd, her voice carried the authority of someone who'd climbed from the very bottom to the very top. "This restaurant represents something simple," she said. "Kindness matters. When someone shows you dignity when you have nothing, when they see your humanity when others see only problems, that changes everything." Dion gave me more than a meal that day. He gave me hope. He showed me that I mattered. She looked directly at Sarah as she continued. "There are people in this industry who believe food should only go to those who can pay premium prices, who think compassion is bad for business, who measure success only in profit margins." Her smile was sharp as a blade. "I'm here to prove them wrong." The success was immediate and explosive. Food critics raved not just about the exceptional cuisine, but about the revolutionary business model. Every meal purchased funded a free meal for someone in need. The job training program had a waiting list hundreds of names long. Other cities began calling, begging for franchises. Within a year, Dion's Kitchen had expanded to 5 locations. Within 3 years, it was a national phenomenon. Dion found himself featured on magazine covers, invited to cook at the White House, consulted by business schools studying compassionate capitalism. But the moment that mattered most came on a quiet Tuesday evening, 2 years after the opening. Dion was working the line when he noticed a familiar figure at table 7, a young man, probably 16, nervously clutching a worn baseball cap. His clothes were clean but clearly secondhand, his shoes held together with duct tape. Dion plated the ragu with extra care, added an extra roll, and walked it out personally. "On the house," he said, setting the steaming bowl in front of the startled teenager. The boy's eyes filled with tears. The same grateful, desperate tears Dion remembered from that alley so many years ago. "Thank you," the boy whispered. Dion smiled, thinking of a little girl who'd made a promise and kept it, who'd turned a moment of kindness into a movement that fed thousands. "Just remember to pay it forward," he said. That night, as Dion locked up the restaurant, he found Ariana waiting in the alley, the same alley where it all began. She was holding 2 containers of ragu. "For the road," she said with a grin. "Though I suppose we don't need the alley anymore." They stood in comfortable silence, 2 people who'd found each other again despite impossible odds, who'd built something beautiful from the ashes of cruelty and neglect. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Sarah had just let it go that day?" Ariana asked. Dion considered this. "I think about it sometimes, but you know what? I'm glad she didn't. Her ugliness led to something beautiful. Sometimes the worst people give us the greatest gifts. They show us exactly who we don't want to be." Above them, the neon sign buzzed softly. Dion's Kitchen, a place where everyone eats. The light spilled into the alley, transforming the space. Where a hungry girl had once searched through garbage into something warm and hopeful. "Same time tomorrow?" Ariana asked, shouldering her bag. "Wouldn't miss it," Dion replied. They walked in different directions, but their paths would cross again in the morning, in the kitchen where miracles were made one meal at a time, where kindness was the secret ingredient that transformed ordinary food into something extraordinary, and where a promise made by a desperate child had grown into an empire built on the simple radical notion that everyone deserves to eat with dignity. The city hummed around them, full of people rushing toward their own destinies, most of them unaware that somewhere in Seattle, in a restaurant built on love instead of profit, 2 people had proven that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change the world.